Poor cleaner begs a billionaire father for milk for her son, promises to pay him back one day, and the response is unbelievable. The grocery store was nearly empty on that Thursday afternoon. Only the mechanical sound of the cash registers and the faint hum of the fluorescent lights broke the silence. Marissa adjusted Eli in her arms for the third time in less than a minute. The little baby with blonde hair and rosy cheeks wouldn't stop crying, no matter how gently she rocked him. "Shh, just a little longer, my love," she whispered, planting a kiss on her son's forehead. Her deep, dark circles gave away her sleepless nights. She was still wearing her grey cleaning uniform. There hadn't been time to change after her last job of the day. Her fingers were rough, marked by constant contact with cleaning products. Marissa looked at the clock on the store wall, 7:37 p.m. She needed to hurry. "We're just going to get the milk and go, okay? Mommy promises," she murmured to the baby, who continued to cry. Eli was only 6 months old. His eyes, blue like a summer sky, were red from crying so much. Marissa knew he was hungry. His last bottle had been more than 4 hours ago, and she had already diluted the remaining baby formula to make it last longer. There was nothing left at home. She walked quickly down the central aisle, heading straight for the dairy section. Her eyes scanned the shelves until she found what she was looking for, a can of baby formula. She held the can with her free hand while balancing Eli on her other arm. The little one's cries echoed through the nearly empty store. "We're almost there. We're almost there," she repeated softly, more to calm herself than her son. With every step, she felt the weight of the last few months on her shoulders. Since she had been left alone with Eli, her life had become a constant struggle for survival. Cleaning jobs during the day, sleepless nights, bills piling up, and the constant worry about her son's well-being. She headed to the only open checkout lane. The cashier, a middle-aged woman with a bored expression, didn't even look up when Marissa placed the can on the counter. "Is this it?" the woman asked, scanning the barcode. "Yes, just the milk," Marissa replied, trying to control her breathing. "That'll be $23.50. Marissa opened her worn-out purse and took out a debit card, the only one she still had. Her hands trembled slightly as she handed it to the cashier. Eli kept crying, now even louder. "I need to buy milk for the baby," she blurted out nervously, when she realized the cashier was looking at her impatiently. The woman inserted the card into the machine and waited. Marissa held her breath. The seconds seemed to drag on as the machine processed the transaction. Then came the sound, that sharp, short beep she knew all too well. "Card declined," the cashier announced, handing back the plastic. "Want to try another one?" Marissa's heart sank. That was her only card, and her payment wouldn't be deposited into her account until next week. The overdue rent had eaten up her last savings. She felt her face burn with shame as tears began to well up in the corners of her eyes. "I don't have another one," she murmured, trying to keep her composure. It was then that she noticed out of the corner of her eye that she wasn't alone in line. Right behind her, a tall, broad-shouldered man was holding the hand of a little blonde girl. The girl, about 5 years old, had her hair in 2 perfect braids that fell over the shoulders of her pink coat. Her crystal blue eyes were watching Marissa with a disconcerting intensity. The man, whom Marissa assumed was the girl's father, seemed uncomfortable with the situation. His eyes darted from the crying baby to the declined card in the cashier's hand, and then to the floor. He wore clothes that revealed his comfortable financial status, a dark leather jacket and well-polished shoes. Marissa felt a wave of desperation rise within her. Eli needed that milk. She couldn't just leave without it. The baby continued to cry, his little red face showing all the anguish he felt. Turning to the cashier, she gathered all the courage she had left. "Please, it's just the milk. I promise I'll pay you back one day." The cashier pressed her lips together, visibly embarrassed. "I'm sorry, but I can't." Marissa felt the weight of humiliation grow. Tears now streamed freely down her face as Eli continued to cry, as if sensing his mother's distress. Her whole body trembled with nervousness and exhaustion. "I promise I'll pay you back the money," she said, A little louder than she intended, her voice choked with suppressed sobs. The silence that followed seemed to weigh a ton. The cashier looked around, unsure how to proceed. Two other customers, who were now approaching to form a line, watched the scene with a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. Marissa was about to give up when she felt a small movement behind her. The little blonde girl was tugging on her father's jacket sleeve, trying to get his attention. The man leaned down, and the girl whispered something in his ear, loud enough for Marissa to hear. "Daddy, the baby's hungry. Bees. Help her." Those simple words, spoken with the innocence only a child possesses, seemed to hang in the air for a moment. The man, Julian, as Marissa would later find out, hesitated. His eyes met Marissa's for a brief instant, and she saw something in them change. A flicker of recognition, perhaps, or just compassion. Without a word, Julian stepped up to the checkout and handed a black credit card to the cashier. "You can run this," he said simply. The cashier took the card with a slight nod and swiped it through the machine. This time, the sound was different, a double beep indicating the transaction was approved. "Thank you for your purchase. Have a good day," the cashier said, handing the can of milk over in a plastic bag. Marissa stood frozen for a moment, unable to believe what had just happened. A mixture of relief and shame washed over her. Eli, as if sensing the change in atmosphere, quieted his crying a little. She turned to Julian, who was already putting his wallet back in the inner pocket of his jacket. His deep brown eyes avoided direct contact with hers. Thank you," she managed to say, her voice still trembling. "I'll pay you back. I promise." Julian just gave a slight nod, saying nothing. It was the little girl who smiled at Marissa, a genuine smile that lit up her small porcelain face. Her blue eyes sparkled with a natural kindness that contrasted with the discomfort of the situation. Marissa took the bag with the can of milk and, adjusting Eli in her arms, quickly left the store. The cold night air hit her face, still wet with tears. But now they were different tears, of relief, of gratitude, of a feeling she couldn't name. As she walked briskly down the sidewalk, past illuminated storefronts and parked cars, she couldn't help but think about the unexpected gesture. A stranger had paid for something her own card couldn't cover. And it was all because of the words of a child who couldn't ignore the cries of a hungry baby. Marissa clutched Eli to her chest. The baby was already calmer, as if he knew he would soon get the food he so desperately needed. His small blue eyes were beginning to close, tired from so much crying. "Let's go home, my love," she whispered, kissing her son's golden hair. Tonight we have milk. 2 blocks away in front of the grocery store, Julian still stood, watching Marissa's figure disappear into the dark of the night. Beside him, Lily squeezed his hand tightly. "Is she going to be okay, Daddy?" the girl asked, with the sincerity only children possess. Julian looked down at his daughter and smiled faintly. "I think so, Princess. I think so." What none of them knew as they went their separate ways on that cold night was that this small encounter, this moment of need and compassion, would change the course of their lives forever. Julian woke with a start, his body slightly damp with sweat. It had been a long time since he'd had a nightmare. He looked at the digital clock on his nightstand, 3:42 a.m. He sighed and ran his hands over his face. He sat on the edge of the bed, his feet touching the cold wooden floor. In the dream, he heard a baby crying. He searched for it in endless grocery store aisles, but could never find it. The crying grew more distant until it became just an echo. He got up and walked to the bedroom window. He pushed the curtain aside and looked out at the deserted street. The city was asleep under a starry sky. Julian picked up a glass of water from the table and drank it in small sips. It had been 4 days since the incident at the grocery store. 4 days since he had paid for the can of milk for that woman with tired eyes and her crying baby. 4 days, and Julian still couldn't get the scene out of his head. The strangest part was that there was nothing extraordinary about the encounter. Paying a bill for a stranger in need wasn't so out of the ordinary. He had made similar gestures before. So why did this specific woman, Marissa he had heard the cashier call her, keep coming back to his thoughts? Maybe it was the way she held her son in her arms, so delicately, even while being visibly exhausted, or how her eyes conveyed both strength and vulnerability at the same time, or even how she had promised to pay him back, with a dignity that the embarrassing situation couldn't shake. Julian went back to bed, but knew he wouldn't be able to sleep again. Since the death of his wife as Clara 3 years ago, sleep had never been the same. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, letting his thoughts flow. The morning came quickly. Julian was making coffee while Lily, sitting at the kitchen table, drew something in her notebook, her tongue stuck between her teeth in concentration. Her blonde hair, still messy from sleep, fell across her face. "What are you drawing, Princess?" Julian asked, placing a cup of hot chocolate in front of his daughter. Lily held up the drawing, proud. "It's the lady from the store and her baby." Julian took the paper. In the childish drawing, a female figure held a small blue circle that was presumably the baby. Both had big smiles on their faces, unlike the reality they had witnessed days before. "It's very beautiful, Lily." "Do you think they're okay, Daddy?" Julian handed the drawing back to his daughter. "I'm sure they are." But the truth was, he wasn't sure. And that uncertainty bothered him more than he wanted to admit. That afternoon, after dropping Lily off at her paternal grandmother's house for their usual Friday get-together, Julian found himself driving to the grocery store where it had all happened. He parked the car and sat inside for a few minutes, questioning what he was doing there. "This is ridiculous," he muttered to himself. Even so, he got out of the car and went into the store. He walked through the aisles, feigning interest in the products on the shelves, while his eyes scanned the place for the woman with the blonde baby. He bought a few things he didn't need and went through the checkout, the same one from the night of the incident. "Hello?" Julian said casually as the cashier scanned his items. "That lady, the one with the crying baby the other day, has she been back?" The cashier looked at him, confused. "Which lady?" "The one with the baby. Her card was declined. I paid the bill. A can of milk." "Oh, right," the woman said, remembering. "No, I haven't seen her again." Julian nodded, paid for his groceries, and left. On the way to the car, he felt foolish. What did he expect to achieve? Why did he care so much? On Saturday, he took Lily to the park. As he watched her play on the slide with other children, his thoughts returned to the woman from the grocery store, Marissa. Was her baby still crying from hunger? Did she manage to get more milk? Where was the child's father? The unanswered questions irritated him. Julian had always been practical, objective. He wasn't one to dwell on situations or people who crossed his path. But there was something about that young mother, something that struck a sensitive chord within him. On Sunday, he went back to the grocery store. This time, he approached the manager directly. "I'm looking for a customer who comes here sometimes, young with a small baby. Her name is Marissa, I think." The manager, a middle-aged man with a thick mustache, frowned. "We can't provide information about our customers, sir." "I don't want personal information," Julian hurried to say. "Just if she's okay. If she's come back to shop here." "I'm sorry, I can't help you," the manager replied, walking away. Julian left the store feeling a mix of frustration and shame. What was he doing? Stalking a stranger over a trivial act of kindness. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. It was the purity of his own daughter's gesture that had touched him. "The baby's hungry. Help her." Lily, at 5 years old, had shown more empathy and humanity than many adults Julian knew. On Monday, while working in his home office, Julian received a call from the cleaning company he hired for house maintenance. "Mr. Blake, I'm sorry to inform you that our regular employee won't be able to make it tomorrow. We'll be sending someone else in her place." "All right," Julian replied, distracted by the documents on his desk. That night, helping Lily get ready for bed, Julian noticed how thoughtful his daughter seemed as she brushed her teeth. "What is it, Princess?" Lily spit the toothpaste into the sink and rinsed her mouth. "Daddy, can we buy extra milk next time we go to the store?" "Extra milk? What for?" "In case we see the lady and the baby again." Julian felt his heart ache. He knelt to his daughter's level and tucked a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. You know, Lily, what you did that day was very special. You saw someone who needed help and you didn't hesitate. You helped too, Daddy. Yes, but you were the one who showed me the way. Lily smiled, her blue eyes shining with childhood innocence. Mommy always said we have to help people who need it, right? Julian nodded, feeling the familiar pang of loss. Clara had been the most generous person he had ever known. She would have been proud of Lily in that moment at the grocery store. Yes, she did, and she was right. After putting Lily to bed and reading her a story, Julian returned to his office. He sat in the leather armchair by the window and watched the city lights in the distance. In his hands, he distractedly swirled the glass of whiskey he had poured. The truth was, Julian felt restless. He couldn't explain it rationally, but he needed to know if Marissa and her baby were okay. Not out of any romantic interest or anything like that. It was something deeper, more primitive perhaps. The need to know that his help had made a difference, that the baby was no longer crying from hunger. Just that, he told himself. He just needed to know they were okay. Then this restlessness would pass, and he could get on with his organized, predictable life. What Julian didn't know, as he drank his whiskey in the solitude of his office, was that fate had other plans, and that very soon, Marissa would cross his path again in a way that would change everything. The light rain had been falling over the city since dawn. Julian watched the drops run down his office window as he tried to focus on the documents scattered across his desk. The clock read 8:47 a.m. The house was silent, except for the distant sound of the cartoon Lily was watching in the living room. The phone rang, pulling him from his thoughts. Mr. Blake? This is the cleaning company. The substitute I mentioned will arrive in about half an hour. Her name is Marissa Conti. Julian said thank you and hung up. He went back to his documents, but his mind was wandering. There was something familiar about that name. At 9:15, the doorbell rang. Julian went downstairs, passing through the living room where Lily was playing with her building blocks on the rug. The television was showing a colorful cartoon about princesses. It's the cleaner, princess. Keep playing, I'll get it. Julian opened the door and felt as if the air had been sucked out of his lungs. Before him stood her, the woman from the grocery store. Marissa. She was wearing the same grey uniform she'd had on that night, but now she was carrying a bag of cleaning supplies instead of the blonde baby. Her eyes widened in immediate recognition. A light blush colored her cheeks. Good morning, Julian managed to say, recovering from the initial surprise. Are you from the cleaning company? Yes, sir, Marissa replied, her voice soft and controlled, despite her obvious nervousness. I'm here to fill in for Elaine today. Julian stepped away from the door to let her in. Please, come in. Marissa took a few hesitant steps into the foyer. Her eyes quickly scanned the room, the polished marble floor, the curved staircase leading to the second floor, the paintings on the walls. Julian noticed she was trying not to show her surprise at the size and luxury of the house. Before he could say anything, a joyful shout came from the living room. Big Daddy, who is it? Lily came running, her bare feet pattering on the wooden floor. She stopped abruptly when she saw who was at the door, her blue eyes wide with recognition and excitement. It's the lady from the store, she exclaimed, a huge smile lighting up her little face. Hey, where's the baby? Marissa glanced at Julian for a moment, as if asking for permission to answer. He gave a slight nod. He's with his grandma, Marissa replied, her expression softening as she spoke to the girl. What's his name? Lily took a step forward, clearly enchanted by this unexpected reunion. Ely, said Marissa, a small smile appearing on her lips. He's 6 months old. My name is Lily and I'm 5, the girl announced, proudly holding up 5 little fingers. Can your baby come play with me one day? Lily, Julian intervened gently. Miss Conti is here to work. Let's let her get started, okay? But Daddy, no buts. Go back to your toys. You can talk to her more later, if she's not too busy. Lily pouted a little but obeyed, not without flashing one last smile at Marissa. Julian turned to the woman, feeling strangely awkward. He had imagined this reunion several times over the past week, but never like this with her as his temporary employee. I'll show you the house, he said, professionally. So this way. Julian led Marissa through the main rooms on the ground floor: living room, dining room, kitchen, powder room. He explained where the extra cleaning supplies were, which areas needed special attention, trying to keep his voice neutral, as if she were just another employee and not the woman who had occupied his thoughts for days. Usually Elaine starts with the bedrooms upstairs, he explained, climbing the stairs with Marissa a few steps behind. Yes, sir, she replied, keeping a respectful distance. I have the instructions from the company as well. Julian showed her the master bedroom, his office, the guest room, and finally, Lily's room, decorated in shades of pink and lavender, with little stars painted on the ceiling. Lily likes her room to be cleaned last, he explained. So that way she can show her favorite toys to Elaine afterwards. Marissa nodded, understanding. There was something in her gaze that Julian couldn't decipher, a mix of determination and vulnerability that intrigued him. Well, I'll let you get to work, he said finally. I'll be in my office if you need anything. Back in his office, Julian tried to focus on his work, but it was impossible. The woman he had been looking for days was now in his house, cleaning his bathrooms and vacuuming his carpets. The irony of the situation was not lost on him. Around noon, he heard a soft knock on the door. Come in, he said, straightening up in his chair. Marissa appeared, holding a small white envelope. Mr. Blake, I'll finish the upstairs after lunch. I just wanted to give you this. She held out the envelope to Julian. He took it, confused, and opened it. Inside was a $25 bill. What's this? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Say it's for the milk, Marissa said, looking directly at him for the first time that day. From the grocery store. Julian felt a lump in his throat. Those $25 were probably much more needed by her than by him. You didn't have to do this, he said, handing the envelope back. Yes, I do, she insisted, not taking the envelope back. I pay what I owe. Julian recognized in her the same dignity that had impressed him at the store. Despite all her difficulties, Marissa had principles she wouldn't compromise. Consider it a gesture of respect, he said softly. There's no debt here. Marissa hesitated, her eyes fixed on his. For a moment, Julian thought she would insist, but then something in her expression changed. Thank you, she said, finally taking the envelope back. And for the first time since she had entered his house, Marissa gave a light smile. The rest of the day passed in a strange dance of closeness and distance. Julian tried to work but found himself listening to the sounds of Marissa moving through the house. Occasionally, he heard Lily's excited voice chatting with her, asking questions about Eli and telling stories about her own toys. Around 4 in the afternoon, Julian went downstairs to make some coffee and found Lily sitting at the kitchen table, drawing one, while Marissa cleaned the cabinets. Look, Daddy, Lily exclaimed, holding up her drawing. I drew Eli, even though I haven't met him yet. Julian looked at the drawing, a circle with 2 blue dots and a smile, surrounded by yellow rays that were presumably the baby's blonde hair. It's very beautiful, Princess, he said, exchanging a quick glance with Marissa, who continued her work. Marissa said Eli likes to draw too, Lily continued, enthusiastically. He scribbles more than he draws, Marissa corrected gently, but he loves colors. Julian watched how Marissa spoke of her son, her eyes lit up, her posture relaxed, her voice gained a special softness. It was clear how much she loved that child. Daddy, can I show my room to Marissa? I want to show her my unicorn collection. Marissa is working. Lily. So maybe another time, but she's cleaned almost everything. Only my room is left, right, Marissa? Marissa nodded. It's the last on the list. See? Lily insisted. Can I show her while she cleans? Julian sighed, defeated by childhood logic. All right, but don't get in the way of her work. Lily skipped away, pulling Marissa by the hand. Julian smiled, appreciating his daughter's enthusiasm. There was something refreshing about the way children formed connections, without prejudice or reservations. An hour later, Marissa came downstairs with her bag of supplies, ready to leave. Lily followed her, still talking excitedly. So are you going to bring Eli next time? Please, Please. We'll see, Lily, Marissa replied gently. It depends on his grandma. Julian approached the foyer. Finished for the day? Yes, sir. Everything is clean according to the instructions. Thank you. Will you be coming tomorrow too? The question slipped out before he could stop it. Marissa adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder. No, sir. Elaine is back tomorrow. I was just filling in for her today. Oh. Julian felt a pang of disappointment that surprised him with its intensity. Well, thank you for your work. Bye, Marissa, Lily exclaimed, hugging the woman's legs. Say hi to Eli for me. I will, Marissa promised, lightly touching the girl's blonde hair. Julian opened the door. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still grey. Do you have a ride back? I can call a cab if you need one. That's not necessary, thank you. I'll catch the bus at the corner. She took a few steps outside, then stopped and turned. Mr. Blake? Yes? Thank you for everything. And with that, she was gone, walking quickly down the stone path that led to the front gate. Julian stood at the door, watching her walk away, feeling that something important had just happened, even without knowing exactly what. She's nice, isn't she, Daddy? Lily said by his side. Yes, Princess, he replied distractedly. She is nice. That night, after putting Lily to bed, Julian sat on the living room sofa with a glass of wine. The house was impeccably clean, with a faint scent of cleaning products in the air. But that wasn't what held his attention. It was the envelope, the same one Marissa had tried to give him earlier. It was now on the coffee table, placed carefully next to a small handwritten note. Thank you for your kindness and understanding. Some debts are impossible to repay with money. Marissa. Julian picked up the note, rereading the simple words several times. There was something in them, something in the woman who had written them, that touched a dormant part of his heart. Fate had curious ways of working, he thought. For weeks, he had looked for her, and then, as if by a miracle, she had appeared at his door, as if the universe had decided that their stories should, somehow, intertwine. Julian tucked the note into his shirt pocket. He didn't know what would happen next, but he had a strange certainty that this would not be the last encounter between them. 2 weeks had passed since the day Marissa had shown up as a substitute cleaner at the Blake house. After that encounter, Julian had contacted the cleaning company to specifically request her services. He offered to pay more if necessary. The supervisor was surprised by the request, but managed to rearrange Marissa's schedule to include the Blake house twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. On that Thursday morning, Julian was working in his office while listening to the familiar sounds of Marissa's presence in the house. The vacuum running downstairs, the faint scent of cleaning products wafting up the stairs, and most notably, Lily's excited voice following Marissa everywhere. It was the 4th time Marissa had come, and with each visit, Lily grew more attached to her. Julian adjusted his glasses and tried to focus on the contract he was reviewing, but his thoughts kept returning to the scene he had witnessed earlier. Lily, sitting on the kitchen floor with her dolls, while Marissa cleaned the cabinets, the two of them chatting like old friends, despite the age difference. There was something about the interaction between them that fascinated him. Maybe it was the natural way Marissa answered Lily's incessant questions, never showing any impatience, or the way his daughter, normally reserved with strangers since her mother's death, had completely opened up to this woman she barely knew. The sound of laughter interrupted his thoughts. Julian got up and walked silently to his office door, leaving it ajar to observe the hallway. Lily and Marissa were in the girls' room. Julian could see them through the open door. Marissa was folding some clothes that had been left on the bed, while Lily, sitting on the plush pink rug, played with her collection of stuffed unicorns. This one is Sparkle, Lily was saying, holding up a purple unicorn with a silver mane. He flies higher than all the others. Really, Marissa replied, putting the folded clothes in the drawer. Thos, and isn't he afraid to fly so high? Unicorns aren't afraid of anything, Lily explained, with the seriousness only a 5-year-old can employ when discussing the characteristics of magical creatures. Julian smiled, leaning against the doorframe. Lily continued to introduce her collection, one by one, with meticulous details about their personalities and special powers. Marissa listened attentively, asking questions and reacting with genuine interest. When the unicorn presentation was over, Lily fell silent for a moment, playing with the mane of one of the stuffed animals. "Marissa," she said finally, "does your baby cry a lot?" Marissa, who was now organizing the children's books on the shelf, turned to look at the girl. Sometimes," she answered honestly. "All babies cry. It's their way of saying they need something. What do they need? Lots of things. Sometimes they're hungry, sometimes they're sleepy, sometimes they just want a hug." Lily pondered this, her small brow furrowed in concentration. "Does he sleep hugging you?" Marissa smiled, a soft expression taking over her face. "Yes, often. Eli likes to feel that I'm close." "My daddy sometimes lets me sleep in his bed when I have nightmares," Lily confided. "I like to feel that he's close too." Julian felt a pang in his chest. Since Clara's death, Lily occasionally had nightmares. In those moments, he would welcome her into his bed, holding her little hand until she fell back asleep. It was a ritual they both needed. "It's nice to have someone close when we're scared," Marissa agreed, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Everyone needs hugs, not just babies." "Mommy gave the best hugs," Lily said, her voice soft. "She went to heaven when I was 2. Julian held his breath. Lily rarely spoke about Clara to strangers. Marissa was silent for a moment, as if carefully choosing her words. "I'm so sorry," she said finally. "I'm sure she was wonderful. Daddy has pictures of her all over the house. She was pretty and laughed a lot. Sometimes I don't remember her face very well, but I remember her hug." Marissa knelt beside Lily and gently tucked a strand of blonde hair behind the girl's ear. "Hugs are the most important part to remember," she said softly. Lily looked at Marissa with her big blue eyes. "Does Eli have a daddy?" Julian saw Marissa tense almost imperceptibly before relaxing again. "No, sweetie. It's just me, Eli, and his grandma." "Like us?" Lily exclaimed. "It's just me, Daddy, and Grandma Margaret." "Yeah, I guess so," Marissa agreed with a small smile. "Can I meet Eli one day? Please. I promise to be careful. He's just a baby." "Maybe one day," Marissa replied, getting up to continue tidying. "Now, where do these books go?" Julian retreated silently back to his office, not wanting to be caught spying. He sat at his desk but couldn't get back to work. The conversation he had just witnessed had left him thoughtful. It was impressive how Lily had opened up to Marissa, talking about Clara, about her nighttime fears. Since her mother's death, the girl had become more reserved, especially with women, as if she feared forming bonds that could be broken again. Nannies and teachers always commented on how difficult it was to earn her trust, but with Marissa, it was different. There was an immediate connection, a trust that Julian couldn't fully explain. Maybe it was because Marissa didn't try to replace Clara. She didn't assume a forced maternal role or treat Lily with the pity many adults showed upon learning she had lost her mother. Marissa simply treated her like a person, a small person, but a person with valid thoughts and feelings. Or maybe it was because they both shared something in common, the experience of an incomplete family where an important piece of the puzzle was missing. Later, as Marissa was in the kitchen getting ready to leave, Julian went down to talk to her. Lily was in the living room watching cartoons. "How was your day?" he asked, leaning against the kitchen counter. "Quiet," Marissa replied, putting her cleaning supplies in her bag. "Your house is always very organized. It makes the job easier." Julian smiled. "That's all Lily. She puts her toys away every day before bed." "She's a special child," Marissa commented. "Very smart and observant for her age." "Yes, she is." Julian hesitated, then added, "She talks a lot about you and Eli at home. She's fascinated by the idea of meeting a baby." Marissa smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her face. "She reminds me of my younger cousin when she was that age. Always full of questions and theories about how the world works." There was a brief, comfortable silence that surprised Julian. "You know," he said finally, "Lily's birthday is next month. I'm planning a small party in the garden, nothing too elaborate. If you and Eli would like to come, she would be very happy." Marissa seemed surprised by the invitation. I don't know if that would be appropriate. I'm just the cleaner. You're more than that, Julian said before he could stop himself. To Lily, I mean, she cares about you. Their eyes met for a moment. Julian realized he was holding his breath. I'll think about it, Marissa finally replied. So thank you for the invitation. She closed her bag and slung it over her shoulder. See you on Tuesday, then. See you Tuesday, Julian confirmed, walking her to the door. Lily came running from the living room to say goodbye, hugging Marissa's legs as had become her custom. Bye, Marissa. Say hi to Eli. I will, Marissa promised, as she always did. After she left, Julian stood at the door for a moment, watching her walk to the gate. There was something different in the air, a feeling he couldn't quite name. Daddy, Lily's voice brought him back. Do you think Marissa and Eli can come to my party? Julian looked at his daughter, her blue eyes full of hope, and felt something shift inside him, an awakening, a recognition. I hope so, Princess, he answered honestly. I hope so. That night, while cleaning up the kitchen after dinner, Julian found himself thinking about how different his house felt on the days Marissa came, more alive, somehow, more complete. As if an empty space he didn't even know existed was being filled, slowly, almost imperceptibly. And for the first time in a long time, that realization didn't scare him. Autumn was advancing quickly. The trees in the Blakes' garden were losing their leaves, creating orange and golden carpets on the well-kept lawn. The sun was setting earlier, and the afternoons brought a chill that heralded the coming winter. It was a particularly cold Tuesday when Marissa finished her work a little later than usual. Lily had spilled juice on the living room rug, creating a stubborn stain that took time and patience to remove. It was already past 5 in the afternoon when Marissa put the last cleaning product in her bag. The house was quiet. Lily had gone out with her grandmother to buy school supplies, and Julian had been working in his office since mid-morning. Marissa hadn't even seen him all day, only hearing the occasional sound of his footsteps upstairs or the low murmur of his phone calls. She was about to leave when Julian appeared in the kitchen. He looked tired, with his hair slightly disheveled and his tie loosened around his neck. Are you leaving already? He asked, seeming slightly surprised. Yes, I just finished, Marissa replied, adjusting the bag on her shoulder. It took a little longer with the stain on the rug. Julian nodded, running a hand through his hair in a gesture Marissa had already noticed was characteristic of him when he was thoughtful. It's terribly cold out there, he commented, looking through the kitchen window at the rapidly darkening sky. Would you like some tea before you go? I just made some. Marissa hesitated. In the 2 months she had been working at the Blake house, she had always maintained a professional distance. She did her job, chatted with Lily, exchanged occasional words with Julian, but never crossed the invisible line that separated employee and employer. Julian noticed her hesitation. Just a quick cup of tea, to warm up before facing the cold. There was something in his eyes, a kind of lonely weariness that made Marissa nod. All right. A quick tea. Julian smiled faintly, taking 2 mugs from the cabinet. Please, have a seat. Mint or chamomile? Mint, if it's not too much trouble. No trouble at all. Julian prepared the tea with precise, familiar movements. Marissa sat at the kitchen table, feeling strangely out of place. She was usually the one cleaning this table, not sitting at it as a guest. How's Eli? Julian asked, placing a steaming mug in front of her. He's doing well, Marissa replied, wrapping her hands around the mug to absorb the warmth. He started crawling last week. Now he won't stay still for a second. Julian smiled, sitting across from her. I remember that phase with Lily. Suddenly they discover mobility and the whole world becomes a dangerous playground. Exactly, Marissa agreed, a small smile forming on her lips. My mother installed baby gates in every possible corner of the house. They sipped their tea in silence for a few moments. Through the window, they could see the first stars appearing in the darkened sky. Lily talks about him a lot, Julian commented. I think she's really looking forward to meeting him at her birthday party. Eli got excited too when I showed him the gift we bought, Marissa said, then blushed slightly. Well, actually, he just clapped his hands when he saw the colorful paper. But I'll take that as excitement. Julian laughed, a genuine sound that Marissa rarely heard. She noticed how his eyes crinkled at the corners when he truly laughed. The silence returned, but it wasn't uncomfortable. There was a strange familiarity in that moment, two tired people sharing a moment of pause in their hectic lives. "How has it been?" Julian asked suddenly, his voice softer. "Taking care of Eli and your mother at the same time." Marissa looked at him, a little surprised by the direct question. In 2 months, that was the first time Julian had asked something truly personal. "Difficult," she answered honestly. "But I have no choice. My mother needs her medication, Eli needs everything, and I have to stretch myself thin." Julian nodded, understanding. "You're very strong." "It's not a matter of strength. It's necessity." Marissa took a sip of tea. "Sayas, when there's no choice, you just keep going." Something in the way she said that seemed to touch Julian deeply. He looked at his own mug for a moment. "I understand that," he said finally. "After Clara died, there were days I could barely get out of bed. But Lily needed breakfast. She needed to go to school. She needed a present father. So I got up, even when all I wanted to do was disappear." It was the first time Julian had spoken openly about his wife to Marissa. She felt the weight of the confidence. "The loneliness is the hardest part," he continued, his voice almost a whisper. "Not the physical loneliness, but the one of not having someone to share the little things with. The first tooth Lily lost, the drawing she brought home from school, the moments that should be for two parents to see together." Marissa nodded, understanding perfectly. "For me, it's not having anyone to share the worries with. When Eli had a fever last month, I stayed up all night watching him breathe. No one to take turns with, no one to say that everything would be okay." "That's exactly it," Julian agreed, his eyes meeting hers. "Being everything to someone is exhausting. And being a mother and a daughter at the same time complicates it even more," Marissa added. "I want to take care of my mother like she took care of me, but sometimes I feel guilty that I can't do more." Julian reached his hand across the table in an instinctive gesture of comfort, but stopped before touching hers. He pulled his hand back, as if realizing he had crossed an invisible line. "You do the best you can," he said. "And that's all any of us can do." Marissa smiled faintly, grateful for the understanding. They finished their tea in a comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts, yet somehow connected by a mutual understanding of their struggles. The sound of a car parking in the driveway interrupted the moment. Headlights briefly illuminated the kitchen through the window. "That must be Lily and my mother-in-law," Julian said, standing up. Marissa also stood up quickly. "I need to go. My mother is with Eli, and I don't like to leave them alone for too long." Julian nodded, collecting the mugs. "Of course. Thanks for staying for tea." "Thank you for the invitation," she replied, grabbing her bag. They walked together to the front door. Outside, Margaret, Clara's mother, was helping Lily out of the car, both of them loaded with shopping bags. "Marissa!" Lily exclaimed upon seeing her at the door, her little face instantly lighting up. She dropped the bags on the ground and ran to hug her. "Hi, little one," Marissa smiled, bending down to receive the girl's hug. "How was the shopping?" "We bought lots of cool things, and Grandma bought me a huge ice cream." "Sounds wonderful," Marissa said, straightening the wool hat that was crooked on Lily's head. Margaret approached, carrying the bags her granddaughter had abandoned. She was an elegant woman, with the same blue eyes as Lily, but there was a reservation in her gaze as she watched Marissa. "Good evening," she said politely. "Good evening, Mrs. Blake," Marissa replied. "I'm just leaving." "I'll walk you to the gate," Julian said, taking a coat from the rack near the door. They walked side by side down the stone path that led to the main gate, their breath forming small clouds in the cold air. The garden lights turned on automatically, illuminating the path with a soft, golden glow. "Thank you for the conversation," Marissa said when they reached the gate. "It was nice." Julian smiled, a genuine smile he rarely showed. It was nice. Sometimes we forget how important it is to just talk. For a moment they stood there, looking at each other under the soft light of the garden lamps. There was something growing between them, something neither of them was ready to name or fully acknowledge. "See you Thursday," Marissa finally said, breaking the silence. "See you Thursday," Julian replied. He stood and watched as she walked to the bus stop, feeling something inside him shift, subtly but undeniably, like the first wind that signals a change of seasons. Autumn gave way to winter. The first snow fell on a Tuesday, covering the Blakes' garden with a pristine white blanket. Julian watched the flakes fall from the grey sky through his office window, a cup of coffee growing cold on his desk. It was almost 10 in the morning, and he could hear Lily in the living room, counting down the minutes until Marissa's arrival. Over the last 2 months, the household routine had subtly transformed. Tuesdays and Thursdays, the days Marissa came to clean, had become Lily's favorites. The girl would wake up earlier on those days, choose her clothes with special care, and wait in the living room, near the window, for the moment she would see Marissa walking up the path to the door. Lily had turned 6 the month before. Her birthday party was small, just as Julian had planned. Only a few classmates, our Margaret and some close family friends, and of course, Marissa and Eli. It had been the first time Eli had visited the house, and Lily was overjoyed. She spent the entire party taking care of the baby, showing him her toys and watching his every move with fascination. Julian was surprised by his daughter's gentleness and patience, normally so energetic and restless. Since then, Marissa occasionally brought Eli with her when she came to work, especially when her mother couldn't watch him. Julian had insisted he didn't mind. On the contrary, it was good for Lily to have another child's company. The sound of the doorbell interrupted his thoughts. He heard Lily's excited voice shout, "I'll get it," and the sound of her little footsteps running down the hall. Julian smiled, taking a sip of his now cold coffee. Voices downstairs, Lily's crystal-clear laughter, Marissa's soft tone, and then Eli's cheerful babbling. Julian went downstairs quietly. He stopped halfway, observing the scene at the entrance of the house. Lily was bouncing around Marissa, who was holding Eli in one arm while trying to take off her coat with the other. The baby, now almost 10 months old, was smiling widely, revealing his first little teeth. His blonde hair had grown longer, forming small golden curls. "He brought the teddy bear I gave him," Lily exclaimed, pointing to the small blue teddy bear Eli was clutching tightly. It was the gift Lily had chosen for him at the mall, insisting that every baby needed a stuffed friend. "He doesn't sleep without the teddy bear now," Marissa said, smiling. "It's his favorite toy." Lily seemed to swell with pride. "Let's take him to play in my room. I made a drawing for him yesterday." Julian came down the rest of the stairs, announcing his presence. "Good morning." "Good morning," Marissa replied, looking up at him. "I hope it's not a problem that I brought Eli today. My mother had a doctor's appointment." "Of course it's no problem," Julian assured her. "So it's always good to have him here." "Daddy, can I show Eli my new puzzle?" Lily asked, already tugging at the sleeve of Marissa's coat. "Of course, Princess, but remember, he's still too little for small pieces." I know," Lily replied, rolling her eyes in a way only children can without seeming rude. "I'll just show him the pictures." "Come on, Marissa." Marissa shot an apologetic look at Julian before being dragged by Lily towards the stairs. Julian just smiled, waving them on. He was used to how his daughter would kidnap Marissa in the first few minutes of her arrival. He went back to his office, trying to focus on work, but his thoughts kept returning to the voices and laughter coming from Lily's room. After half an hour, he heard Marissa say she needed to start cleaning, and Lily's immediate protests. "But we barely played." "Lily, Marissa needs to work," came Julian's voice from the hallway. "You can show her your drawings later." "Okay," Lily agreed, resigned. "But can I stay with Eli while you clean?" "If your dad doesn't mind keeping an eye on you two," Marissa replied. "I can work in the living room today," Julian offered. "That way I can supervise." And so a new routine was established. Lily played with Eli in the living room, under Julian's watchful eye, while Marissa did her work around the house. Every so often, Marissa would come to check on her son, and Julian couldn't help but notice how her eyes lit up when she saw the baby laughing with Lily. There were moments, brief, almost imperceptible, when Julian would find himself watching Marissa when she wasn't looking. The way she hummed softly while she cleaned, how she tied her hair in a messy bun when she was focused on a more difficult task. The gentle smile that appeared on her face whenever she heard Eli's laughter coming from the living room. That afternoon, while Marissa was cleaning the living room windows, Lily showed Eli her latest drawing, a family of stick figures with yellow hair. "This is Daddy," she explained, pointing. "This is me, this is you, Eli, this is Marissa, and this is Eli's grandma." Julian, pretending to work on his laptop, looked up upon hearing the explanation. Marissa had also stopped, the cleaning cloth suspended in mid-air, looking at the colorful drawing. "It's our family," Lily continued, innocently. "All together." A silence fell over the room. Eli, oblivious to the sudden tension, clapped his little hands on the paper, babbling happily. Marissa and Julian exchanged a quick glance before both returned to their respective tasks, pretending not to have noticed the meaning behind Lily's words. Later, when Lily went upstairs to get more toys, Julian approached Marissa, who was arranging the sofa cushions. "Sorry about the drawing," he said softly. "Lily has a very vivid imagination." Marissa smiled, shaking her head slightly. "You don't need to apologize. It's natural for children to create connections like that." Julian nodded, watching Eli, who was crawling on the rug, exploring everything around him. "She really adores you two." "The feeling is mutual," Marissa replied, looking fondly at her son. "Eli asks for her on the other days. Well, in his own way. He points to the teddy bear and makes those sounds that only mothers understand." Julian laughed, feeling a strange lightness in his chest. It was good to see his house like this, full of life, of sounds, of small daily joys. It was in that moment, watching Eli crawl over to him and grab onto his pants to pull himself up, that Julian realized something important. He hadn't seen Lily this happy since before Clara's death. His daughter had always been a cheerful child, but there was a shadow in her eyes, a reservation that appeared at the most unexpected times. Now that shadow seemed to have diminished, and it wasn't just Lily. Julian felt different too, lighter, more present, as if, somehow, the presence of Marissa and Eli had filled an empty space he didn't even know existed within his house, within himself. When Marissa finished her work that day, the sky was already dark, and the snow was falling more heavily. Julian insisted on driving them home, worried about the road conditions. In the car, Lily and Eli fell asleep in the back seats, exhausted from the day's play. "Thank you for the ride," Marissa said when they arrived at the small apartment building where she lived with her mother and son. "And for being so understanding about Eli." "There's nothing to thank me for," Julian replied softly. "They're good for each other." Their eyes met briefly, and something silent passed between them, an understanding, a recognition that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't only the children who were building important bonds. Julian helped Marissa carry a sleeping Eli and her things to the apartment door. Before saying goodbye, Marissa lightly touched his arm. "Your daughter is special, Julian. You've done a good job with her." The words were simple, but they carried a weight that Julian felt deeply. A lump formed in his throat. "Thank you," was all he could manage to say. On the way back home, with Lily still sleeping in the back seat, Julian realized that something had changed within him. Some door that had been closed for a long time had opened, silently, without him even noticing. And the most surprising thing was that he wasn't afraid of it. The winter had intensified, transforming the city into a white, silent world. It had been nearly 3 months since Marissa started coming regularly to the Blake house, and her presence had become a natural part of the family routine. On that Thursday morning, Julian was coming downstairs with some documents in hand when the phone rang. Lily, who was having breakfast in the kitchen, ran to answer it. "Blake residence," she said with the seriousness she always assumed when answering the phone, something Julian found adorable. There was a pause, and then, "Daddy, it's Marissa." Julian took the phone, immediately noticing the worry in his daughter's voice. "Good morning, Marissa." "Julian, good morning." The voice on the other end sounded tired. I'm so sorry, but I won't be able to come in today or for the next few days. My mother, Margot, got sick during the night. I'm at the hospital with her now." "What happened?" Julian asked, feeling a pang of concern. "Pneumonia. The doctor says she'll need to be hospitalized for a few days. After that, she'll need care at home." There was a pause, and Julian could hear the sound of voices and medical equipment in the background. "I should have called the agency, but with the rush—" "Don't worry about that," Julian interrupted gently. "Take care of her, we'll manage here. Thank you for understanding. I'll get in touch again as soon as I can." After he hung up, Julian found Lily looking at him, her big blue eyes full of worry. "Is Marissa not coming? Is Eli sick?" "No, Princess. It's his grandmother, Marissa's mom. She's sick and has to stay in the hospital." Lily frowned, processing the information. "I like Grandma Clara when she went to heaven." Julian felt the familiar ache in his chest. Clara, his wife, had spent her final weeks in the hospital before passing away from cancer. "No, sweetie. Marissa's mom has pneumonia. It's different. She's going to get better. She just needs medicine and rest. Can we visit her? Bring flowers?" "When Grandma Margaret got sick last year, we brought her flowers and she said it helped her get better." Julian smiled at his daughter's simple, sweet logic. "That's a great idea. Let's wait a few days until she's feeling better, and then maybe we can visit her." 3 days passed with no news from Marissa. Julian called the hospital on the second day and found out that Margot Conti was still admitted but responding well to treatment. He left a message for Marissa saying they were thinking of her and offering help if needed. On the morning of the 4th day, Julian received a text message. "Mom has been discharged. We're home now. She's weak but getting better. Thanks for your concern, Marissa." Julian showed the message to Lily during lunch. "So can we visit now?" the girl asked immediately. "Maybe they need a little rest first," Julian replied. Lily made her famous disappointed pout. "But I already made a get-well card, and I want to see Eli." Julian considered for a moment. "You know what? I think we can do something better than just visiting. We can bring some things that might help. What do you think?" Lily's eyes lit up. "Like a gift basket, like in the princess movies." "Exactly like a gift basket." That afternoon, Julian and Lily went to the grocery store. They bought canned soups, fresh bread, fruits, teas, honey, and some basic items they thought might be useful. Lily insisted on adding chocolates, because candy always makes people happy, Daddy, and a small teddy bear for Eli. The next day, with the basket carefully prepared and the handmade card from Lily placed on top, father and daughter drove to Marissa's address. It was a small apartment building in an older part of the city, painted a soft yellow that seemed faded under the grey winter sky. "Is this where Marissa lives?" Lily asked, looking out the car window. "It's so different from our house." "Yes, this is it," Julian replied, parking. "All houses are different, Princess, just like all families are different." They climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, Julian carrying the basket and Lily firmly holding her additional card, which she had insisted on bringing separately. They stopped in front of door 302. Julian took a deep breath before ringing the bell. They heard slow footsteps on the other side, and then the door opened. It wasn't Marissa who was there, but an older woman with grey hair tied in a simple bun. Despite her apparent frailty and the paleness of her face, there was a natural elegance to her posture. She wore a dark blue robe and leaned lightly on a cane. The woman looked at Julian with eyes that seemed vaguely familiar. She frowned, as if trying to access a distant memory. "Julian?" The surprise in her voice was unmistakable. Julian, who was about to introduce himself, felt the words die in his throat. He stared at the woman, confused for a moment until a flash of recognition crossed his face. "Margot?" The two looked at each other in silence for a few seconds, the surprise giving way to a wave of shared memories. "My goodness," Margot murmured, bringing a hand to her lips. "Look at you. So grown up. Who would have thought?" Julian was still stunned. You're Marissa's mother?" Margot nodded, a faint smile appearing on her pale face. "And you're the mysterious boss my daughter talks so much about. You know each other?" Lily asked, looking curiously from one to the other. Margot lowered her eyes to the girl, her smile widening. "I knew your father when he was about your age, dear. I was the cook at his grandparents' house." "For almost 15 years, Julian completed, his voice soft with the memory. "You used to love hiding in the kitchen and stealing my cookies," Margot said, a light laugh escaping her lips. Julian felt a wave of emotion he hadn't expected. Long-forgotten memories came flooding back. Afternoons after school in his grandparents' warm, welcoming kitchen, the smell of freshly baked cookies, Margot letting him lick the batter spoon while she told stories of her homeland. "You always knew it was me," he said, surprised, "and you never mentioned it." "I wasn't sure at first," Margot replied. "Blake is a common last name, and then, well, I thought you might not remember me. It's been so long." "How could I forget?" The emotion in Julian's voice was palpable. "Your chocolate chip cookies were the best part of my visits to my grandparents." Lily, who was watching the interaction with fascination, lightly tugged on Julian's coat sleeve. "Daddy, did she make cookies for you when you were little like me?" Julian smiled at his daughter, kneeling to her level. "The best cookies in the world, Princess. Margot was like a second grandmother to me when I visited my grandparents on vacation." Come in," Margot said, stepping away from the door. "It's too cold to talk out here." As they entered the small apartment, Julian felt strangely moved. Fate had curious ways of working, intertwining lives when you least expected it. Lily, holding Julian's hand, looked at him and then at Margot, her eyes sparkling with the promise of stories she didn't yet know. There was a whole world before her, connections and bonds that existed long before her birth, and which were now mysteriously resurfacing. And somehow, that made the world seem smaller, more welcoming, and infinitely more full of possibilities. The following weeks brought a new dynamic to everyone's lives. Margot's recovery was slow but steady. Julian began to visit the Conti apartment regularly, sometimes bringing Lily, other times going alone. With each visit, Julian noticed more details about Marissa's life. The apartment was small, but impeccably clean and organized. There were plants on the windowsills, drawings by Eli taped to the refrigerator, and family photos in simple frames on the walls. It was a cozy home, built with love and effort, but he also noticed signs of hardship that Marissa tried to hide. The peeling paint in some corners, the roof that leaked when it rained heavily, the old refrigerator that made strange noises. Once, while Marissa was making tea in the kitchen, he saw a stack of bills organized on the table, some marked with late notices. That night, on his way home, Julian couldn't stop thinking about what he had seen. Marissa had temporarily stopped working to care for her mother, which meant less money coming in. Medical expenses, even with insurance, were piling up. The next day, Julian made a few calls. He spoke with his accountant, a contractor friend, and an appliance store where he had been a customer for years. He had a plan in mind, but he knew he had to be discreet. Marissa was too proud to accept charity. He started with small things. When he visited, he would bring more food than necessary, claiming it was leftover from dinner. He would leave toys for Eli that Lily didn't use anymore, even though some still had tags on them. Once, he forgot an envelope with cash under a book on the coffee table. 2 weeks after Margot's discharge, while Marissa was at a doctor's appointment with her mother, Julian showed up with a team of workers. In just a few hours, they fixed the leaky roof, painted the peeling walls, and installed new curtains that matched the decor better. When Marissa returned and found everything done, she was speechless. Julian just said it was a small thank you for everything Margot had done for him in his childhood. The new refrigerator arrived on a Saturday morning. Marissa was home alone with Eli. Margot had gone to physical therapy with a neighbor. The delivery man rang the bell, carrying papers to sign. "There must be some mistake," Marissa said, confused. "I didn't order a refrigerator. It's all paid for, ma'am. I have the address here, apartment 302, and I also have instructions to take the old one." Before she could protest further, the man and his assistant were already installing the new, modern and spacious appliance in place of the old, noisy refrigerator. When they finished and left, Marissa stood in the kitchen staring at the gleaming appliance. knowing exactly who was behind it. That afternoon, when Julian showed up with Lily for a visit, Marissa was waiting for him with an expression that mixed gratitude and discomfort. "We need to talk," she said after Lily ran off to play with Eli in the bedroom. Julian followed her to the small apartment balcony. The day was cold, but the sun was shining shyly between scattered clouds. The roof, the walls, the curtains, and now the refrigerator, Marissa said, looking out at the city skyline. "You're helping me too much." There was no accusation in her voice, just a statement, perhaps with a touch of embarrassment. Julian stood beside her, leaning on the balcony railing. "I noticed some overdue bills on the table the other day," he admitted. "I took care of them too." Marissa closed her eyes for a moment. "Why? We're not your responsibility." "Your mother took care of me when I was just a boy," Julian replied softly. "And now you're doing the same for my daughter." Marissa turned to face him. "Cleaning your house is my job, Julian. You already pay me for that." "I'm not talking about the cleaning," he said, his eyes meeting hers. "I'm talking about how you listen to Lily, how you respect her ideas, how you make her feel safe and understood. I'm talking about how you brought light back into her life, into our life." A silence settled between them, filled only by the distant sound of children playing in the nearby park. "When Clara died," Julian continued, his voice lower now, "something in Lily went out. She still laughed, she still played, but there was a shadow in her eyes. A sadness I didn't know how to fix." He paused, choosing his words. "Since you and Eli came into our lives, that shadow is disappearing. Lily is happier, more confident, more whole." Marissa looked down at her own hands, resting on the railing. "She's a special child." "Yes, she is, and you helped her remember that." Another silence, longer this time. "I don't want you to think I'm buying your friendship or Eli's," Julian said finally, "or that I expect anything in return. It's just gratitude for Margot being kind to a lonely boy so many years ago, and for you being kind to my lonely daughter now." Marissa took a deep breath, letting Julian's words sink in. She remembered how her mother always talked about that sweet boy who visited his grandparents on vacation, how she would save extra cookies for him, how she worried when he seemed sad. "Mum always had a huge heart," Marissa said, a small smile forming on her lips. "She treated every child as if they were her own." "That's how I felt," Julian agreed. "Like I had a third grandmother, one who made the best cookies and never got tired of my endless stories about dinosaurs." Marissa laughed, imagining a little Julian enthusiastically talking about tyrannosauruses while her mother baked cookies in the Blake's kitchen. "All right," she said finally. "I accept your help on one condition." "What's that?" "That you let me repay you somehow, not with money, but maybe I can teach Lily how to make my mother's famous cookies. The recipe is a family secret." Julian smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. "I think she would love that." From inside the apartment, they heard Lily's laughter and Eli's excited babbling, sounds of joy, of innocence, of connection. "It's a small world, isn't it?" Marissa reflected, looking at the sky that was beginning to darken. "Of all the houses I could have worked in, I ended up in yours. Or maybe," Julian suggested, "the world is just the right size for the right people to meet at the right time." Their eyes met again, and this time, something new hung between them. Not just gratitude or memory, but a possibility, a path that both were beginning to envision, however timidly. For now, it was enough to know they were there together, weaving new bonds from the threads of a story that had begun long ago. In a kitchen smelling of freshly baked cookies, spring arrived gently, bringing color and warmth after the long winter. The gardens of the Blake house began to bloom, small green buds appearing on the trees that surrounded the property. It was a sunny Saturday. Julian had left early to handle some business at the office, promising to be back in time for lunch. Lily, excited about the day's plan, had barely slept the night before. Today was the special day. Margot and Marissa were coming to spend the day, and the long-awaited cookie lesson would finally happen. At 10 in the morning, the doorbell rang. Lily ran to the door, nearly tripping on her way. They're here," she shouted, As the housekeeper, Mrs. Peterson, opened the door, Marissa entered first, carrying Eli in her arms. The baby, now almost a year old, could already stand up holding onto furniture, and was babbling a few almost words. His blonde curls had grown, framing his round little face. Behind them, Margot walked with the help of a cane, but her complexion was much healthier than it had been a few months ago. "Good morning, sunshine," Marissa smiled at Lily, who was already pulling her free hand toward the kitchen. "Let's go. I've already set up everything you asked for," the girl said, her blue eyes sparkling with excitement. Margot laughed, following them with slow steps. "I see someone is eager to learn the secrets of the Conti cookies." The Blakes' kitchen was spacious and modern, with marble countertops and stainless steel appliances. On the central island, Lily had meticulously arranged all the ingredients Marissa had listed the day before: flour, sugar, butter, eggs, chocolate bars, vanilla, and some spices that Margot had insisted on bringing from home, carefully wrapped in small glass jars. "Everything is perfect," Marissa praised, placing Eli in the high chair that Julian had bought especially for these visits. Lily climbed onto a tall stool, ready to begin. She wore a small pink apron with her name embroidered on it, a birthday gift from Margaret. "First," began Margot, approaching the counter, "we need to preheat the oven." "Conti cookies need a very hot oven." Lily nodded seriously, absorbing every word as if it were the most important lesson of her life. "Now, let's start with the butter. It needs to be at room temperature, soft to the touch." Margot guided, Lily executed, and Marissa assisted, holding bowls and helping with measurements. Eli watched everything from his high chair, occasionally clapping his hands and letting out little squeals of joy, as if he understood the importance of the moment. Mrs. Peterson, who had initially stayed to help, realized she wasn't needed and quietly withdrew, leaving the 4 generations immersed in the magic of shared cooking. "My grandmother taught me this recipe when I was 7, Margot said, as Lily carefully mixed the dry ingredients. "She used to say that cookies aren't just food, they're memories, they're affection, in the form of a cookie." "Is that why Julian likes them so much?" Lily asked, looking at Eli's grandmother with curiosity. Margot smiled, her eyes softening with the memory. "Our Julian was a quiet boy when I met him. He would come to spend the holidays with his grandparents and was often alone while they handled business. He would hide in the kitchen, watching everything I did. One day I offered him freshly baked cookies and saw the first genuine smile on that little face. Daddy still smiles when he eats cookies," Lily observed, with the simple wisdom of children. "Some tastes stay with us for a lifetime," Margot replied, helping Lily form small balls of dough on the baking sheet. The aroma began to fill the house as the first batch baked. It was a sweet, comforting smell that seemed to carry stories in its invisible molecules. It was this aroma that Julian smelled when he opened the front door, returning from his appointment. He stopped for a moment in the foyer, involuntarily closing his eyes. That smell, so familiar, so full of memories. For a moment, he was no longer in his adult home, but in his grandparents' kitchen, a 9-year-old boy eagerly waiting for Margot to take the baking sheet out of the oven. He followed the aroma to the kitchen and stopped at the door, observing the scene. Lily, with flour on her nose and cheeks, was laughing as Margot told some story. Marissa was arranging a tray with tea, moving with the natural grace Julian so admired. Eli had fallen asleep in his high chair, a small trickle of drool running from his slightly open mouth. Julian smiled, suddenly feeling like a boy again. That boy who had found comfort and acceptance in Margot's kitchen during lonely summers. "Daddy?" Lily exclaimed when she noticed him. "We're making Grandma Margot's cookies. I helped with everything." "I can see that," he replied, entering the kitchen. "And from the smell, they're turning out wonderful." "You're just in time," Margot said, taking a baking sheet from the oven. "This batch just finished." Julian approached, leaning in to get a better smell of the aroma. "Exactly as I remember." "The memory of taste is the most powerful," Margot commented, her eyes meeting Julian's with mutual understanding. "Let's go to the dining room," Marissa suggested, picking up the tea tray. "It's cooler in there, and there's room for everyone." They sat at the large oak table in the dining room. The morning sun streamed through the high windows, creating golden patterns on the polished wood. Lily, proud, placed the plate of cookies in the center of the table, while Marissa served tea in porcelain cups. "Try one, Daddy," Lily insisted, pushing a still warm cookie toward Julian. He took the cookie and took a bite. The flavor exploded in his mouth. Sweet, rich, with a hint of vanilla and cinnamon that only Margot's cookies had. He closed his eyes for a moment, savoring not just the cookie, but all the memories that came with it. "Perfect," he said finally, looking at Lily with genuine pride. "You have a gift, Princess." The girl beamed, turning to Margot for confirmation. "A true chef," the lady agreed, stroking Lily's blonde hair. They made small talk while eating the cookies and drinking tea. Margot told stories from the past, from when Julian was a child. Lily talked about school and her friends. Marissa shared Eli's latest feats, who continued to sleep peacefully in his high chair beside her. Julian watched it all, feeling something strange and wonderful grow in his chest. It was a feeling of completeness, of belonging. His house, usually so quiet and orderly, was filled with voices, laughter, stories, filled with life. For the first time in a long time, perhaps since Clara's death, Julian felt like part of something real. Not just existing, following a routine, but truly living, connected to other people in a deep and meaningful way. As the afternoon wore on and Margot mentioned she needed to rest, Julian offered to drive them home. Lily begged for Eli to stay a little longer, but the baby had just woken up and was clearly tired, rubbing his eyes and whimpering softly. "Another day, Princess," Marissa promised, picking up her son. "Maybe next week." While Lily helped Margot gather her belongings and Mrs. Peterson put the remaining cookies in a decorative tin, Julian lightly touched Marissa's arm. "Can we talk for a minute in my office?" She nodded, following him to the room at the end of the hall. It was a masculine room, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a dark wood desk and leather armchairs. Julian rarely brought visitors there. It was his personal space, his sanctuary. "What is it?" Marissa asked, gently rocking Eli, who had rested his sleepy head on her shoulder. Julian took a deep breath as if gathering courage. "You've transformed this house, Marissa." She blinked, surprised by the direct statement. "Lily has never been happier," he continued. "She waits for you every day. Not just the days you come to work, every day. She asks when you and Eli are coming back, makes drawings for you, plans what she'll show you on your next visit." "She's very special to us too," Marissa replied softly. "Eli adores her." Julian walked to the window, looking out at the garden for a moment before turning back to Marissa. "I have a proposal for you," he said. "A full-time job here at the house. Not just cleaning, it would be more like managing the house, helping with Lily, whatever is needed. With a proper salary, of course." Marissa stared at him, processing what she had just heard. "You wouldn't have to run around to different houses anymore," Julian continued. "Here, it's stable, it's secure, and you're a part of it." He paused, searching for the right words. "You and Eli are a part of it." Marissa lowered her eyes, stroking the hair of her son, who was now sleeping peacefully in her arms. When she looked up again, there were unshed tears shining in her eyes. "Thank you," she said, her voice little more than a whisper, "for seeing me. For respecting me." Julian took a step toward her, resisting the urge to touch her face. "You're good for us. This is the least I can do." They stood there, looking at each other in silence, as if words were no longer necessary. Through the ajar door, they could hear Lily excitedly telling Mrs. Peterson about the secrets to perfect cookies. The world continued outside, but in that moment, in that small office, something important was changing, evolving, blooming like the first spring flowers in the garden. "I accept," Marissa finally said, a smile lighting up her face. "We accept." The simplicity of the answer held worlds of meaning. It was more than a professional agreement. It was the acknowledgement of a bond that had formed between them, between their families, between past and present. When they returned to the living room, where Lily was proudly showing Margot a new drawing, Julian felt light, as if a weight he had carried for years had finally been lifted. His house had been just a structure, beautiful and empty. Now it was becoming a home again. Summer arrived in all its glory. The Blakes' garden exploded in color. Red roses climbed the trellises. Blue hydrangeas formed small floral clouds in the flower beds, and the lawn, a vibrant green, seemed to invite bare feet and outdoor games. 6 months had passed since Marissa had accepted the job at the Blake house. 6 months of adjustments, discoveries, and new rhythms. She and Eli now occupied the guest suite on the ground floor, transformed into a small apartment for them. Margot, after much insistence from Julian, had moved into the former housekeeper's room near the kitchen, her kingdom par excellence. It was a Sunday in July, one of those perfect days that seemed to be straight out of a postcard. The sky, an impossible blue, showed not a single cloud. A gentle breeze eased the heat of the sun, bringing with it the scent of the garden flowers. From the kitchen window, Julian watched Lily running across the lawn. At 6, she had grown a few inches in recent months. Her blonde hair, tied in a loose braid, swayed as she spun with Eli in her arms. The boy, now almost a year and a half old, was laughing out loud, his small arms open as if he wanted to hug the world. "Be careful not to fall," Julian shouted through the open window, more out of paternal instinct than real concern. Lily waved, slowing down a bit but without losing her enthusiasm. Eli clapped his hands, asking for more, in his still limited but perfectly understandable language. On the porch, sitting in a wicker chair under the shade of a striped awning, Margot was flipping through a gardening magazine. Beside her, a table with lemonade and cookies, her famous cookies that were now a Sunday tradition at the house. Her hair, once completely grey, had recently been dyed a soft brown, an idea from Lily, who had insisted that Grandma Margot needs to look younger to keep up with Eli. Julian smiled, pouring himself more coffee. The scene was so peaceful, so natural that sometimes he had to pinch himself to believe it was real. "What are you thinking about?" Marissa asked, entering the kitchen. She wore simple jeans and a white t-shirt, her hair up in a casual bun. The formality of the early days was gone. Here, now, she was home. "About how things change," Julian replied, handing her a cup of coffee. "A year ago, this house was too quiet." Marissa nodded, sitting at the kitchen table. "And our apartment was too noisy with the leaks." They both laughed, sharing the memory of the old apartment with its problematic roof. Through the window, they saw Lily carefully place Eli on the ground. The boy, who had started walking just 2 months ago, took a few wobbly steps toward Margot, who held out her arms to receive him. Lily ran to get a colorful ball, ready for another game. "She's become an amazing big sister," Marissa commented, a touch of pride in her voice. "She always wanted a little brother," Julian replied. "And Clara and I plan to have more children, but—" His voice trailed off. It was no longer painful to talk about Clara. Time had softened the sharp pain of loss, turning it into a gentle longing, an acknowledgement of what they had shared. Marissa covered his hand with hers, a simple gesture, but full of understanding. No words were needed. Outside, Lily had returned with the ball and was now trying to teach Eli how to kick it. The boy, determined as ever, swung his chubby little leg, more often missing the ball than hitting it. Each attempt was met with enthusiastic applause from Lily and encouraging laughter from Margot. "Sometimes I wonder how we got here," Marissa said, looking at the scene through the window. "Of all the convenience stores in all the towns, you had to walk into that one." Julian smiled at the movie reference. "I think we have a can of baby formula to thank." "And a 5-year-old girl who couldn't stand to see a baby cry," Marissa completed. Their eyes met over their coffee cups, and in them was a deep understanding. They didn't need grand declarations or solemn promises. What they had built, this new home, this blended family, had grown naturally, like the flowers in the garden. The path had not always been easy. There were adjustments, small conflicts, moments of doubt. The transition from employee and employer to something more had required honest conversations and a redefinition of boundaries. Margaret, Clara's mother, had needed time to accept the new family arrangement. The outside world, with its judgments and expectations, sometimes applied pressure. But at the center of it all was Lily, The girl who, with the innocent wisdom of children, saw possibilities where adults saw only obstacles. It was she who first drew the four of them as a family. It was she who insisted that Eli needed to live closer so they could play together every day. It was she who, without realizing it, planted the seed of something new and beautiful. Julian reached out, lightly touching Marissa's face. There was no need for grand words or dramatic gestures. The love that was growing between them wasn't like in the movies, sudden, overwhelming. It was more like a well-tended garden, planted with care, watered daily, growing strong and resilient. In the yard, Lily managed to get Eli to kick the ball. The little one shouted with joy, looking to Margot for approval. The lady applauded, her face lit by a smile that seemed to rejuvenate her. "I think we should join them," Julian suggested, standing up. "It's perfect out there." Marissa nodded, taking the hand he offered. Together they walked into the garden where the laughter of Lily and Eli filled the air like music. This was the truth they had discovered. Sometimes home isn't a place, but people. And love doesn't need to be proclaimed from the rooftops. It simply exists, growing quietly in the small moments, in daily kindnesses, in mutual acceptance. And sometimes it takes the eyes of a child to see what is right in front of the adults, the possibility of starting over, of forming new bonds, of building something beautiful from the broken pieces of the past. If this story touched your heart, subscribe